In today's video, we're going to be looking at a mathematical challenge for Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you know someone that's a Jehovah's Witness, or if you are a Jehovah's Witness member yourself, I want to strongly encourage you to watch this short video. It's going to be life-changing. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, Pastor Ivor Myers here, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at a mathematical challenge for Jehovah's Witnesses. This is going to be straight to the point, so please follow along carefully. Let's go ahead and begin. What we're going to be doing in this video, we're going to be looking at two books that were written by Jehovah's Witnesses. These are their official writings on the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. And so, as you can see, the first book is called Revelation, its grand climax at hand. And the second book is Pay Attention to Daniel's Prophecies. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a prophecy that Jehovah's Witnesses hold as their foundational prophecy. This prophecy is found in Daniel chapter 4. And just to give a little bit of background, in this prophecy, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And in this dream, he sees a tree that extends into the heavens. And then there's a holy watcher who says, cut down this tree. The tree is cut down, a band is put around the tree. And then in the vision, we're told that 7 times or 7 years, a time is equal to a year. So 7 years are going to pass over this stump before the stump is restored. And as you read on in Daniel chapter 4, you come to find out that this tree represents Nebuchadnezzar. And it is a prophecy of Nebuchadnezzar basically going crazy for 7 years. He's going to, live out in the wilderness with the animals. He's going to eat grass like the oxen. And at the end of 7 years, his reason is going to return to him. So that's the explanation of this prophecy given by Daniel. Daniel himself explains the prophecy. Now, I want you to note what Jehovah's Witnesses say about this prophecy. So we're going to go ahead and read from their source, and here's what it says. The fulfillment of other Bible prophecies help us to see when the Lord's day begins. Now, just for a little context, when they're talking about the Lord's day here, they're talking about a time in the book of Revelation in which various time prophecies are going to come to pass. And so it goes on to say, for example, Daniel described a chopping down of rulership in the line of King David after 7 times. It would be known that the Most High is ruler in the kingdom of men. So what I want you to see here is they are now referring the very vision, the very prophecy we just talked about. The prophecy which states that Nebuchadnezzar was going to go crazy for 7 years. But now Jehovah's Witnesses are saying that this prophecy has something to do with the line of King David being cut down, and 7 years or 7 times are going to pass over the kingdom of God being cut down or cut off from the earth until that kingdom is restored again. Now, the first problem that we have is it's not a mathematical one, but it's a problem nonetheless. The problem is, how do we go from this tree, which Daniel says represents Nebuchadnezzar, to all of a sudden now representing the line of the King of David? How do we do that? That's something that needs to be answered. You can't take a symbol that is used to represent an enemy of God and then turn around and make that symbol represent the people of God. You can't do that with the same symbol. Now, let me just say, for example, like in the book of Daniel, Babylon is described as a lion, but Jesus Christ is also described as a lion, but it's not the same lion, right? The same lion doesn't represent Babylon and Jesus. These are two different, even though it's the same symbol, we're talking about two completely different representations not found in the same text. So we couldn't For example, look at the lion, the description of the lion in Daniel 7, which points to Babylon, and say, in a sort of, in a sort of symbolic sense, the lion also represents the Lion of the tribe of Judah. We're going to keep reading on. It goes on to say, the major fulfillment of that prophecy started with the desolating of the kingdom of Judah, which is indicated by Bible evidence to have been completed by October 607 BC. So now they're saying that there is a major fulfillment of this time prophecy, this mathematic given in Daniel chapter 4. This mathematic timestamp of 7 years, or if we were to take those years in days, 2,520 days, which would make a total of 7 years, according to the Jewish reckoning, where a year is 360 days, not 365. So 360 times 7 would yield 2,520. And what Jehovah's Witnesses say is that, yes, there was a literal fulfillment of this when Nebuchadnezzar went crazy, but there is a dual application. There is a greater time period that is here being mentioned, pointing to the kingdom of David being restored, being cut down. And then after these 7 times, whatever time period this 7 times is over, the kingdom of David is going to be set back up again on earth. All right. Are you following so far? I'm laying the foundation for you to understand the mathematical crisis that Jehovah's Witnesses face when it comes to this prophecy. So what they say is that if you start from the year that Jerusalem was cut down, which, note how they say, according to the Bible, is 607 BC. Now, I went ahead and went into AI chat, and I just want you to see the question that I typed in the AI chat. The question is, when was Jerusalem destroyed? The answer is, Jerusalem has been destroyed twice. The first destruction of Jerusalem took place in 586 BC by the Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar II, who destroyed the first temple and deported many Jews to Babylon. The second destruction took place in 70 CE. Now, I just want you to note that this 607 date is already wrong off the bat. It's not, Jerusalem wasn't destroyed in 607, it was destroyed in 586. So I want you to just keep that mathematical point in your mind. How are you starting this particular prophecy of 7 times, whatever this 7 times is? How are you starting it in a date that is already inaccurate? That tells me that whatever math you apply, however you add this 2520, this symbolic 7-year period to 607, it's already wrong, because history confirms that Babylon was not destroyed in 607, it was destroyed in 586. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what they do with this prophecy. Now, note the section in their book of Daniel which talks about this 7 times, and you'll notice the title, 7 times that affect us. In other words, this 7 times that we're about to address, that they're about to address, is no longer talking about what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. The 7 times also affects us down at the end of time. And watch what they say. As represented by the great tree, Nebuchadnezzar symbolized world rulership. But remember, the tree stands for rulership and sovereignty far grander than that of Babylon's king. It symbolizes the universal reign or universal sovereignty of Jehovah. Now, let me just say this. I don't remember that. The book says remember, but I don't remember that. And I don't know if any of you remember that. What I remember is that the tree is symbolic of Nebuchadnezzar being cut down. It is not symbolic of Jerusalem ruling. It is not symbolic of any of that. It's symbolic of Nebuchadnezzar being cut down. But anyway, they say it represents God's kingdom. Notice what they go on to say. Before Jerusalem's destruction by the Babylonians, the kingdom centered in that city with David and his heirs sitting upon Jehovah's throne, representing God's sovereignty with reference to the earth. So now they've moved from the tree, represents not just Nebuchadnezzar being cut down, but also God's sovereignty. And then they're going to go from God's sovereignty to Jerusalem. And then they're going to go from Jerusalem to Jerusalem being destroyed in 607 BC. God himself, watch this, God himself had such sovereignty chopped down and banded in 607 BC when he used Nebuchadnezzar to destroy Jerusalem. Exercise of divine sovereignty toward the earth by a kingdom in the line of David was restrained for 7 times. So now we got to see, what do they do with this 7 times mathematically? What are they going to end up with? How are they going to connect this 7 times to extend to a period where a kingdom or a movement is going to be represented as the kingdom of God on earth? So let's see what they say. They say the king's times, or 7 years, were 360 days multiplied by 7, or 2,520 days. So far the math is correct, right? 2,520 days. But what about the major fulfillment of his dream? Now remember, the major fulfillment of the dream was exactly what Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar. It's exactly what the angel said. The angel said, Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to lose your mind. That's the major fulfillment of the dream. But they're saying, no. That was the minor fulfillment. There's a major fulfillment. Now, how we get to that major fulfillment, no one knows. But let's keep reading. This was indicated by Jesus' words, Jerusalem will be trampled on by the nations until the appointed times of the nations are fulfilled. So once again, I want you to see now, this tree, which represents Nebuchadnezzar being cut down, is now being used to represent the trampling of Jerusalem by the Gentiles. Not the Gentile king himself being cut down, but the trampling of Jerusalem by Gentiles. We have a major problem with this tree now being used to represent something else that is totally foreign from the chapter. But let's keep reading, because we're not focusing on that right now. This is just as a matter of fact stuff, like by the way stuff. Let's keep reading. The trampling began in 607 BC when Jerusalem was destroyed and the typical kingdom of God ceased to function in Judah. When would the trampling end? At the times of restoration of all things, when divine sovereignty would again be manifested toward the earth through symbolic Jerusalem, the kingdom of God. So now we're looking for this so-called establishment of the kingdom of God at the end of this 7 times. So notice what they say next. If we were to count 2,520 literal days from Jerusalem's destruction in 607 BC, that would bring us only to 600 BCE, a year having no scriptural significance. Now, they are right. It would bring us to a year that has no scriptural significance. The reason is that you're supposed to take the 20 days literally. The significance is Nebuchadnezzar comes back into his right mind. That's the significance. We're not to be looking for anything else. But they're saying we find nothing of historical significance, so therefore the prophecy, wink, wink, can't be literal days because nothing happened then. Watch what they go on to say. Even in 537 BC, when the liberated Jews were back in Judah, Jehovah's sovereignty was not manifested on the earth. That was so because Zerubbabel, the heir of David's throne, was not made king, like blah, 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 right? Let's just get to this point. Since the 7 times are prophetic. Now, here's what I need you to focus on. Notice what they said. Since the 7 times are prophetic, we must. Now, I want you to highlight and mark that word. Since the 7 times are prophetic, we must apply to the 2520 the scriptural rule, a day for a year. A day for a year. And then they go on to cite several verses that show that in Bible prophecy, in specific Bible prophecy, sometimes a day can equal a year. So they quote Ezekiel 4:6, Numbers 14:34. And by the way, The day for a year principle is a legitimate principle when it comes to certain Bible prophecies. Let me say that again. It is a legitimate principle when it comes to certain Bible prophecies. However, in other Bible prophecies, it is not legitimate. So, for example, when Jesus was prophesied to be in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, we wouldn't say that he was in the earth for 3 years. When a prophecy is specifically connected to an individual in that lifetime, an individual, a living person, and it says this amount of time, that's what it means. This amount of time. Nebuchadnezzar is not a symbolic person. The time period cannot be symbolic. But here, they, for some reason, take this 25-20 days and make it 25-20 years. They're applying the day for year principle incorrectly. Now, notice what this ends up doing. What it ends up doing is if you take 607 BC and add 2,520 years, you come to the year 1914. And this is the year that Jehovah's Witnesses say God set up his kingdom on earth through the Jehovah's Witness organization. Notice what they say. Hence, this first vision and the counsel it contains are for the Lord's day from when? 1914 onward. So let me explain this then. What they have done is they've said, okay, this prophecy brings us to 1914. 1914 is what starts the Lord's Day. And as a result, all the other prophecies, in all the other time prophecies, will be fulfilled from 1914 onward. And this is where there's a huge problem. So let's just recap. 3 math challenges. We're going to look at 2 of them right now. Number 1, explain how you get 2 differing values for the 25-20. In other words, the prophecy states that this 25-20 is allotted to Nebuchadnezzar. How do you take a time prophecy, a mathematical stamp, allotted to an individual, and now double that so that there's not just one value of literal day for day, but there's a secondary value of a year for a day for a year? How do you do that? And where else is that done in the Bible? What other time prophecy can you point to that has the same principle, where it is both literal and symbolic? That's going to be a very huge challenge, because there's no reason given in the text to take a number that is allotted to an individual and say, oh, but in a greater sense, it also represents a day for a year. So that's math challenge number 1. Where else can you find? Is there a second witness in the Bible of any other prophecy that is allotted to an individual, a literal time period, but it is also symbolic? You can also apply a day for a year and the prophecy still be true. There is no place else in the Bible that does this. But I need you to present. I need you to see. I need you to come to that conclusion. Thus, the math challenge, right? If you're sharing with a friend that's Jehovah's Witness, or if you are a Jehovah's Witness that are watching right now, please tell us how, show your work. How do you take 25-20 literal days and apply a second value of symbolic days? That's number 1. Second math problem, second math challenge. Explain the starting point of your equation. You're starting in 607 BC. And it's very interesting that you said, according to Bible information, according to the Bible, the date is 607 BC. Is that because perhaps there's a realization that all historical sources actually point to 586, 587? So why ignore all the historical data to choose a date that is going to fall in line, that is going to bring you to the year you want it to bring you to? So show your work. Why 607 instead of 586? Okay, now let's get to the third problem. The third problem, and then we're going to wrap this up, because this is the major problem. Okay, the other problems are super significant, but here is the major problem. Because we see here, for example, hence the first vision and the counsel it contains are for the Lord's Day from 1914 onwards. So they're saying that all the other prophecies will begin in 1914 or take place from 1914 onward. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's look at the prophecy found in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, another mathematic timestamp. This mathematic timestamp is the time times and a half, or the 1260-day prophecy. So remember, what did they do with Daniel 4? They applied the day 4 year principle, and they said, you must apply this principle because this is prophecy. That's what they said. Let's go back and just so you can see that I'm not making this up, and just in case you forgot, let's go back. Let's go back. Since the 7 times are prophetic, we must apply to the 2520 the scriptural rule, a day for a year. Let's see if they are consistent. Let's see if they apply the day for a year principle to this prophecy in Daniel 7:25. Let's read. Same book. Jehovah's angels refer to the prophetic period. So note, I've circled those words, prophetic period. So we see here, this is prophecy. So according to the rule, what should happen? This should be 1,260 what? Years. Let's see what they do. Jehovah's angels refer to a prophetic period of a time and times and half a time. How long is that? Bible expositors generally agree that this expression denotes 3.5 times the sum of 1 time, 2 times, and half a time. Since Nebuchadnezzar's 7, they even reference Nebuchadnezzar's 7 times. Since Nebuchadnezzar's 7 times of madness amounted to 7 years, the 3.5 times would equal 3.5 years. Again, the math is correct here. But let's see what they do with this time, with this 3.5 years. The prophecy is quite explicit as to when the 1260 days would end, when there is a finishing of the dashing of the power of the holy people to pieces. In the middle of 1918, leading members of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, including its president, J.F. Rutherford, were convicted on false charges, sentenced to long terms of confinement, and imprisoned. God's holy ones did indeed see their work dashed to pieces, their power broken. Counting back 3.5 years from mid-1918 brings us to the end of 1914. Do you see what just happened here? Do you see the mathematical problem? What happened to a day for a year? This is prophetic. What happened to a day for a year? You're just going to drop the rule, and all of a sudden now, this prophetic period of time times and a half, or 3.5 years, or 1,260 days is now literal. What happened to the day for a year? Well, here's what happened to the day for a year. Since the day for a year would equal 1,260 years, a time period too long for Jehovah's Witnesses to be around to claim that, hey, our movement was part of this fulfillment, it has to be 3.5 years so that Jehovah's Witnesses can say, hey, look at what happened 3.5 years at a 3.5 year period in our movement. We were treated really badly. Thus, this is evidence that the Jehovah's Witnesses are we represent God's kingdom on earth. Do you see the math challenge? My Jehovah's Witnesses friends, do you see the challenge? Why are you inconsistent? Why did you not follow the rule? Now, let me show you what some Jehovah's Witnesses will say. And I need you to listen carefully. Here's what they write. The John class had to preach this message for a definite stated time, 1,260 days or 42 months, the same length of time that the holy city would be trampled underfoot. This period seems to be literal since it is expressed in two different ways, first in months and then in days. Now, I'm just going to mention something here. Because if you ask a Jehovah's Witness about the days of creation, are they literal days or symbolic days? They're going to say symbolic days. Now, they're going to say symbolic despite the fact that in the book of Genesis, the days are described in two different ways. Evening and morning were the first day. Now, that seems pretty literal to me. Evening and morning, that's one way of describing the day, were the first day. That's another way of the evening and morning, day. Two different ways. And yet here, they're saying, well, since the 1260 are described in two different ways, it seems to be literal. Do you see the inconsistency? But it doesn't stop there, because there are other time prophecies in the book of Daniel. There's the 1290-day time prophecy, and I want you to notice what they do with this. So the 1290 days, now that's found in Daniel chapter 11. So the 1260 is found in Daniel 7. The 1290 is found in Daniel 12. I'm sorry, I said Daniel 11, Daniel 12. You can read about it there. In Daniel 12, there's a 1290, 1335. Those two prophecies we're coming to. Notice what it says here. So the 1290 days began in early 1919 and ran until the autumn of 1922. Whoa, wait a minute. If something is a rule, like I can understand an exception to the rule, but you've already done the exception to the rule more than you did the rule. The rule says, according to you, since this is prophetic, we must apply the day for a year. But then when you get to these other prophecies that supposedly start in 1914, you drop the day for a year principle. Why? You drop the day for a year rule. Why? You're now going with the exception rather than the rule. Why? Okay. How about the 2300-day prophecy? There's a 2300-day prophecy found in Daniel chapter 8. What do they do with that? Well, let's take a look. From the same book, the 2300 days constitute a prophetic period. Now, again, y'all, let's work this out. Remember, what did we read earlier? Since this is prophetic, we must apply the day for a year. So far, we've seen that they haven't done that at all. Not in the 1260, not in the 1290. Maybe they might do it in the 2300. Let's read. The 2300 days constitute a prophetic period. Hence, a prophetic year of 360 days is involved. This 2300 days then would amount to 6 years, 4 months, and 20 days. When was this period? Well, in the 1930s, God's people began to experience increasing persecution in various countries. And they go on to give a date, 6 years, 4 months, and 20 days later, that is the supposed fulfillment of this prophetic time period. Are y'all seeing the mathematical challenge now? Are you seeing the problem? Let me show you. This is our last slide. And then we're going to rephrase, or we're going to go back to just list out our challenges so you can see. They actually have a chart in the very end of their Daniel book. And the chart lists out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prophecies found in the book of Daniel. Now, one of those prophecies, the 70-week prophecy, is universally understood to be a day for a year, right? And you're going to see on their chart that they have it as a day for a year, correctly. All the other prophecies that are supposed to be a day for a year, which they are, by the way, they apply a day for a day. And the one prophecy that is supposed to be a day for a day, because it's pointing to a very specific individual, 2,520 days are going to pass over you, not 2,520 years, because you don't live for 2,520 years, Nebuchadnezzar. You're a man. You're not going to live that long. So the 2520 is literal time, and the one prophecy that's supposed to be literal time, they take that and apply the day for a year so that they can bring it down to their day. And then everything else that is supposed to be a day for a year, they're like, oh, yeah, well, those are day for day, even though they're prophetic. They are day for day so that we can say all of these prophecies were fulfilled in our movement. Math challenge number 3. Explain the inconsistency with the day for a year rule. Which one of these prophetic interpretations are wrong? Because, listen, they both can't be right. Either your application to the day for a year of the day for a year prophecy to the tree, the Daniel 4 dream of Nebuchadnezzar, either that is correct, and if it is correct, then according to the rule that you stated in your own book, none of these other prophecies that you mentioned, the 1260, 1290, the 1335, the 1335, the 2300, none of those are correct. And if you go with the day for day principle, in which these prophecies are a day for day, none of those are correct, because the way you got down to the 1914 is incorrect. There is the mathematical challenge for Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, it is my prayer that everyone that is watching this, those of you that watch, those of you that claim to be followers of the Lord, are seeking for truth. It is my prayer that as you attempt to answer these mathematical problems and see that they cannot be worked out and still hold your doctrine, your teachings to be true, it is my prayer that you will follow truth wherever it goes. May God bless you as you attempt to solve these 3 mathematical problems.